And now, here's your host of Shaping Success, Wes Tankersley.
Oh, what's up, everyone? Welcome to Shaping Success with myself and Robert Watson. Before we get started, we got a new Patreon this weekend. And it's kind of funny because we haven't, I feel like we need to do some more Patreon stuff as far as getting some of these out there. But Wendell Fernandez joined us as a Patreon. Nikki Pab, who is in the house on TikTok and everywhere else, is a Patreon. And then we also have Anna Mellon, who is probably getting ready to get her kids to school right now. But thank you for those of you who joined the Patreon. Thank you for those of you who subscribe on TikTok. Again, we got Nikki and Clarity Anchor, and we got one more, and I'm trying to remember who it is. I think Frank Hogue. So thanks for subscribing and supporting the show. I'm trying to decide what I'm going to do with that little bit of extra money that we get from it, because I feel like you guys deserve like some sort of gift. So I'll be working on that. And Robert, what's happening this morning?
Man, I'm still fighting with technology, but it's a beautiful morning. There we go. Good enough.
Cool. Thank you very much, Phage. Appreciate you. Yeah, we are, I probably butchered your name, but you can put that down in the comments and I'll try and say that a little bit better. Anyway, well, it is. Hey, one thing that I want to say that I want to talk about today, I don't want to talk about, but I kind of posted a couple of videos about it because tomorrow is a big day in this country's history. We've got an election, and I don't really care who you vote for, but what I do care is that you get your ass out there and vote. So go do it, because your voice cannot be heard. And I think, maybe we'll talk about this. How many times in your life, Robert, have you walked up to someone and said, hey, did you vote? And that person, no matter what side of the aisle they are on, says, nope, I didn't, because my vote does not count.
Probably every election year, at least once or twice. Every single election year.
And I think that's,
if
it's
nobody's
a big
voice
deal.
Counted, then then let's all not go vote, and then there wouldn't be any votes.
Right. And that's the problem. I think that we get like I live in a red state. The red state, it's gonna win. It's a pretty historical thing that this is gonna be a red state. Now there's only like 2 or 3 electoral votes, but it is a red state. And so for people to sit there and say, when it comes down to this or that or blah, 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 I'm not going to vote because it's not worth it because it doesn't count. That's kind of a cop-out in my mind, especially when they spend their whole time talking about the political agenda, like what this is, where that's at. Like this guy should be president, this gal should be president, this, that, blah, 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 blah. Well, did you vote? No, because my vote won't count. Cop-out.
Yeah. Not only did I vote, but I've been working in Oregon for a nonprofit on Get Out the Vote. So not only I live in a red state, but I am actually helping a blue state get out the vote.
Yep.
Because here's the point. It's a nonpartisan, just get out the vote. And I have done the text marketing in the urban areas, and I've done it in the rural areas. And the rural areas tend to be more red, and the urban areas tend to be more blue.
Right.
So the reality is I'm trying to bring out voters no matter where it is. And theoretically, if I work in an urban area, what am I going to do? I'm going to get more voters out because it's a more dense area than the rural. I get that. It doesn't matter. Just get out and vote.
Yeah.
You'd be shocked, right?
And I see, like, on TikTok, it's kind of crazy. It's interesting. Thank you very much for the likes over there. It's interesting how people sit there and they say that doesn't count, blah, blah, blah. You can't say that. You can't, like, I feel like it's a cop-out. Like Nikki said, if you didn't vote, you can't complain. Like, I listen to my little brother, and I'm going to ask him when I see him next, hey, who'd you vote for? Mm-hmm. And he's going to tell me I didn't. But he's the first person to send me all the memes about this and that and blah, 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 and tell me all these things that I already know, and then doesn't go out and vote. It's like...
Well, but I can't emphasize enough. Forget the top of the ticket for a second. Forget the Trump-Harris thing. Down ballot matters so much you don't get it. In some of these areas, you might have a total, for all the way down ballot, you may have 8,000 total votes for like a mayor or something of a small town, right. A city councilman, things like that. Down ballot is essential for the true democracy in America, because we are not a democracy at the top or a republic. But everything down from the national election is a democracy.
Right.
Your local, your state, your county, all that stuff is a big deal. That is where you're most impacted. If you think that that Joe Biden, Donald Trump, Harris matter as much as your local mayor or your local school district, you're not paying attention.
What's going on, Todd?
The taxes and the impact that you have on a local level to your quality of life is fairly amazing. So please consider looking at the down ballot, right?
Yep.
Even if you have this, I don't like anybody, I don't want anybody. Okay, I get it. You don't want to get into the Harris-Trump debate. So be it. And you don't even want to vote for a senator because you don't like the people in Washington. But once you get past senator and congressman, what are you facing? That's state and local.
Right.
Make sure you're out there voting. Change your neighborhood the way you want it. That's the real democracy from the ground up. And listen, I encourage everybody to turn your ballot upside down. Start at the bottom, right? Start at the very bottom of your ballot, not the top. Start at the bottom because that's where you're most impacted by.
Right.
Just a thought.
That's very interesting too, because like you said, it's funny. If I would have turned my ballot upside down, because I voted last week, and it's interesting the way that it works is there's this one, and this is something that you have to kind of do some research on what's going to be on your ballot in your state too, because in Idaho they're doing this Prop 1, don't vote no on Prop 1, and it's like there's no reason. Like if you go and you Google what Prop 1 is without actually doing the research, it's like they don't want you to be able to vote without you claiming a party. That's their thing. Right. So they're saying you can't vote unless you claim Republican, Democrat, Independent, whatever the hell you want to claim, but you cannot vote. Well, buried in that whole thing, there's a bunch of other little things, and this is one proposition, but it's got like 9 or 10 different things that are affected in that, and that is only one of the things. So a vote yes, it's tricky. Like you have to know that information because there's a lot of people that go in, and this is something that I heard when I was in high school. It's like it's a straight ticket, right? I vote a straight ticket, which means that you vote everything that is either Republican or Democrat. It doesn't matter. Well, that's not really a straight ticket thing. There's a whole bunch of questions there that have to be answered. And I don't know. I mean, it's insane. There's my friend Jay. If you guys haven't followed Jay, it's Hard Parking Podcast. You can go over to, this is something that he has told me every election. I've known him for 2 elections, right? So I've known him for 4 or 5 years, but I was with him with the last election, with him with this election. He's like, you need to go in there and you need to go to isidewith.com or it might be .org. But if you go on iSidewith, it goes through all of these policies, and you may think that you believe one way, but it goes through all the policies and how the candidates check, and they go through that. And I do that because of him every time there is an election. I go through there and it's like, and this year you had to do it twice, because if you did it the first time, RFK was on there, and then RFK dropped out. So they had RFK, they had Kamala, they had Trump. Then RFK drops out, and when RFK drops out, your score changes because you don't have RFK to decide with anymore. So now you got to go back through there and do it again, but it tells you the policies, and it's like, I believe that we shouldn't go to war. I believe we should go to war. I believe that we should do this. I believe that we should do that. And it makes you understand how you really feel and think about the policies that are happening in this country. And you're able to make a definitive choice. And you might find out that maybe you don't lean that way. And that's why I do it every year,
Well, yeah, and yesterday I was working on a get out the vote for Measure 117 in Oregon, which was the option to do ranked choice voting.
Yep.
Right, which is a different voting method, right? Which is picking not just the candidate you want, but the second and third. So that if your candidate, especially in primaries, ranked choice voting is incredible. If you have 5 people running for a position, right, on the Democrat or Republican side, you can have a huge impact.
Yep.
But again, this is all about being an educated electorate. Again, you talk about bitching about what kind of system we have, our taxes, all that kind of stuff. Well, listen, most of the stuff happens ground up. So again, look at what the situation is and look through these measures, because some of these measures get through and you look at them and go, man, I don't believe in that. Well, then don't vote for it.
Right.
It isn't a straight one thing or the other. It is figure out exactly what you're about. And remember, these states have lots of ballot measures. And like you were talking about in your state, I think In the
Thank you,
case of
Carl.
Oregon, they have 115, 116, 117 this time, right?
Yeah.
Texas has them all the time. I mean, for example, Texas is a very strange state. Our governor doesn't have as much power as our lieutenant governor does. Our governor is more of a figurehead because of the way our government's structured.
Yep.
People don't know that. But again, most people assume the governor's it isn't in our state.
Yep.
So know how your state works, know how the politics. Why? Because it makes a difference in the quality of your life.
Yeah, and I think it's amazing. You know, Carl's in here, and he posted, you know, the other day something about who he voted for, and I think that a lot of people gave him flack, and I responded to, he kind of did like a rebuttal to what people had said, and I told him, you know, I said, this is the great thing about this country is we can vote for whoever we want. It doesn't matter. And I think that, again, it's this division that has been sown between both sides that if you vote one way, then you don't believe in the other way. Like it's that's not the truth. Like I can sit here and tell you how I feel about something, but I don't shy away from people who feel the other way. They're still my friends. They're still people I hang out with. I mean, half my family thinks one way and half my family thinks the other way. And it's like, you know, I mean, it's...
There's very little time that you will face an election like tomorrow where you actually have seen a version of the administrations of both of them. Trump has been president before. Harris was with the Biden administration. That means both of these administrations you've seen before. And the world did not come to an end under either administration.
Right.
So stop this nonsense of it's going to be cataclysmic. It's not. A lot of what you're being told is so they can raise money.
Yep.
If you're afraid enough of it, you will give. So come on, don't be manipulated like that. We've got a lot of checks and balances in our system.
Yeah,
It's very hard for somebody to come in and just rule.
That's the amazing thing about that is like there's never been like, I mean, there has been times where it's been like all three one way, you know, like the House, the Senate, and the president all Republican or all Democrat. There have been times where that has happened, but it obviously always swings back the other way. You know, we talked about this last week, like how in sales, when I look at like what's going on right now, there are a lot of people who are not purchasing or who are not making appointments or not buying because they don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. But the funny thing about that is when it's all said and done, a week from today, it's just going to go back to business as usual. There's not going to be, you know, a civil war. There's not going to be all these things that happen that you're thinking is going to happen, right? It's one way or another. If it's Trump, we have to live with that. If it's Harris, we have to live with that. We have no choice. You know, it's going to be what it is, and we're all going to survive, and we're all going to live, and everything's going to be just fine.
Well, and I've always taken the attitude, the first president I voted for, I was in uniform.
Mm-hmm.
So remember, my attitude has always been, the person who gets elected is my president. Right, wrong, or different. I may disagree with the policy, but that's my president. That means that right now, my president is Joe Biden. I am not going to walk around and suggest he is otherwise. He is my president. I may disagree with his policy, but he's still my president. If Donald Trump wins tomorrow, he's my president. And I've always taken the attitude that is, in my case, of course, it was my commander-in-chief. It was the guy in charge of me. It was my ultimate boss. Again, we've always been told a long time ago that you salute the office, not the man or the woman.
Right.
Okay. And that's what I'm saying to you again. The office of the president is what we're talking about, not necessarily a man or woman. Come on, folks. Let's be a country united about one thing that we can believe in, which is our system.
Yep.
Okay. If we can't believe in this system, we really do have a big problem.
Right. Let's talk about, I want to kind of talk about like the main focus on this thing, which I wish that something would come of this, but the media, right? I've been listening to a couple interviews where they talk about how, and I guess this is something that I would kind of push on you and ask you about, because when did this happen? But I remember growing up and taking my government class in high school where we're taught about this word called objective, which objective means that you have to look, and this is what the media's job is supposed to be, right? Is to look at both sides of the conversation, both sides of whatever it is, and then show you both sides so that you can make a clear choice of your decision, because that's what news is, right? So what do you think about that? And was it different in, say, the 70s, 80s? Because I wasn't old enough to even be reading the newspaper or watching the news. I mean, we kind of saw it here and there, but to understand that, because I feel like my government teacher, he's like, media is supposed to be this way. And I've been listening to some podcasts where they're talking about, obviously it's not the way it is, because you're not supposed to know what side the media lies on. But I feel like every single Fox is, red, CNN is blue. This used to be like you got that bullshit from The View, right? Because this is not really a network of anything. It's just five people having a panel of people having a conversation. But it's pretty obvious that what side they lean on. Tell me your thoughts on how the media was when you were coming up.
Well, I grew up in the 60s. So you could not have found, despite what everybody talks about this being a tumultuous time, let me put the 60s in context for you. A president was assassinated. A guy running for president was assassinated. 2 African-American leaders were killed, Malcolm X and MLK, all in a period of 10 years. It was the most tumultuous time that this country has probably ever seen other than the Revolutionary War. It just was. It was what the news attempted to do, there were 3 networks. What they attempted to do was give you the news. Now, do this within the construct of remember that they had censors in the studio basically telling you what you could and could not say. Dealt with national security, and it also dealt with words you couldn't use, images you couldn't use, that kind of thing. We had censors. But I remember distinctly in 1968, Walter Cronkite comes back from Vietnam. This is after the Tet Offensive. He comes back, and they never gave opinion on the 5 o'clock news. What happens is a chyron came up above his head that said opinion. And he began at that point, this is in 1968, he began to say, I do not believe the United States can win the war in Vietnam. Basically, he was saying, what you've been told, in my opinion, is not the truth. In essence, what he said.
Right.
But back then, you literally couldn't express opinion without a chyron coming up that said commentary. So you were trying to give the news the way it was, right? Literally the way it was.
Yeah.
I remember if you go back and you look at the footage of when JFK was shot, if you look at the footage, they were giving you the news as it came. Literally the news as it came. It wasn't colored. Now, again, they weren't saying that it was totally correct at the time because, again, news as it flows in. But so after 1968, 68 was kind of a year, it was a very tough year for everybody. 68 with the Chicago riots, it was really not a really positive year. So we go from 68 when they kind of termed that as the year that broke the media. Mm-hmm. Okay, this is when everything started changing. Now people can give you opinion; they can say whatever they want to. You have no idea, and so that's what your problem is. I think what you're really grasping for is that objectivity is not necessarily gone. They're trying to be objective, but they insert so much opinion that you're like, okay, now where's the line here between what you're trying to tell me and where the opinion comes? And the idea of partisan media didn't exist.
Yeah.
Okay, this is a new kind of product design for the masses, right? In other words, I want to feed the right and I want to feed the left with partisan media. So in political science, we spend an awful lot of time studying this. Some of this partisan media came when we had big billionaire owners have started to be conglomerates, right? Yeah. Not necessarily corporations. Corporations tended to do certain things one way. Billionaires tend to do things in another. And you can kind of think how it is, the corporation's doing what? I want to make money. So that kind of stilts the way the product comes. Well, when the billionaire buys it, what does he do? I have an agenda.
Yeah.
I have an ideology, right? I want to get my ideology out. So this is the competing factions that have been taking place, at least for your lifetime. These 2 factions have been growing, right? And continue to grow.
It's hilarious too, because if you think about it, as you break that down, as you're saying what you're saying, I'm sitting there thinking, where do we see this right now? And the biggest thing that I could say that I see right now is when you see Elon Musk stumping for Trump, and you see Mark Cuban stumping for Kamala. It's like that's the same kind of thing. Like those people are the ones where people are looking. And it's funny because my little brother used to send me like memes and all this stuff or these sayings about whatever whatever it is. And I sit there and I go, you just put like our news stories. Like you just pulled that off of Facebook. Like how true can that be? And what I have found over the last couple months is that the reality is a lot of this stuff, that if you want the real information, you have to go there because there are people who are actually posting, but you have to sift through it because it can't just be this, I got a friend request, or not a friend request, but all of a sudden I get these messages in my inbox from a person that I know that said, hey, I'm giving away a free laptop. You want this? It's like, oh yeah, that guy's been hacked. One of my other friends this morning, I was looking on my screen and like all of a sudden he went from this guy to this Asian girl and the name has changed. It's like hacked. And it's all this hacking stuff is going on right now. But if you really go through and you look like on X, there's some stories that are coming out and you're going through it and you're looking at it. And then you go look and you search and you do the research and figure that out. These are true stories. There are documents that back that stuff up. But what happens is where the fake stuff comes from is when people don't go and research and do that backup. And I think we're all instant gratification right now where we see a story and we want to believe it because it's right there. We don't want to go into the wickets and go see what actually happened and where that's at. And so we're very bad at doing our own research. And so I think that the media capitalizes on that. They hope that you're going to just only look at one thing and not look at the other.
Well, but I mean, if you think about it from a rumor standpoint, come on, you've been in a group of friends, especially in high school and college, where somebody tells you something, right?
Yep.
And it's because you're not getting it from them. I saw. It was Jimmy saw.
Right.
Sally told Jimmy. Jimmy told me. I told, what is it by the time it gets to you, right?
Yep.
And that's the kind of situation that the media, because again, what they're allowing it to do, what you're seeing on Facebook and TikTok and stuff, it's not that it's even intentional lies. And yes, there are intentional lies, but it's not. It's just things that are passed on.
Right.
Right? Like I was told, for example, that the United States had boots on the ground in Israel, right? And I said, boots on the ground and fighting? And they said, yes. I said, yes, we do. And they said, well, see, everybody's lying. I said, no, they were brought in as consultants to help with the rescue of the hostages. They weren't brought on the ground as consultants.
Right.
And they said, but they got into a firefight and killed Palestinians. I said, yeah, they got into a firefight that they didn't start. They got cornered and had to fight their way out.
Yep.
I said, so that's not really boots on the ground in the traditional sense. I understand that they're American boots on the ground, but they're not really doing what you think. But that got spun up, right? And spun and spun and spun and spun until it was President Biden ordered U.S. troops in Israel. I was like, okay, fair enough. And that's some of the stuff we see.
I think if you want to know, here's the thing, that we can take this down, we can break this down to like a childhood game, right? If you really think about it, if you guys want to know how the media works or how news works, this is kind of it, all right? It's, in my mind, this is how I think about it. And this is why you have to do the research. Get 30 people together and play a game of telephone. Get 10 people together and play a game of telephone. One person has something to say, a sentence in the beginning, and have that person repeat it into the person next to them. Stand in a line and go. And find out if number 10, if it's the same information that came out of number 1. 90%, 100% of the time it's not. It has turned into this big, crazy, ridiculous story that it did not start out as. So it's very important for you to look at that.
Yeah, and you can do this. If you play the game telephone, do this as a test. Pass a color through the telephone. Blue, right?
Yep.
What will happen is you'll get blue at the other end of 10 people. Why? It's one idea, one concept, and it will get through. That put 2 words together, then put 3, and see what happens when you get to about 4 words. Like you said, it gets pretty jumbled. You can get one concept through, right? Okay. President assassinated. You can get that concept through pretty cleanly. Mm-hmm. But guess what gets weird after that, right? right? When did he get assassinated? By who? Blah, blah, blah. Again, that's the kind of stuff that happens when you get beyond a really basic concept. It's very difficult for people. Very difficult.
And that's. I mean, it sounds pretty juvenile to say something like that, but I'm telling you right now, it'll 100% work.
Yeah.
And I used to do this. As a PE teacher, I used to take the kindergarten classes when they were supposed to line up and get ready to go. It'd be like, okay, let's play this game. And it would be something silly that you'd put in there. And then like at the very end, 20 kids, 30 kids later, it's a completely different story. And it's kind of funny what the story that comes out. But in this sense, it's not that funny about how that goes.
Yeah, we're not having pizza. All you have to do is for the kids is we're not having pizza today.
Yeah.
Because Mrs. Jones couldn't make it. We're having chicken tacos.
Yeah.
That seems pretty simple, right?
Mm-hmm.
Wait till you hear the end of that at the end of the line, right? You might get that we're not having the same thing at lunch.
Yeah.
But
well, and
the
even
reason
Carl brings
why
up this. What about the intentional skew in that game, right? Because that's the thing. Like, there's kids. That's the point. Like, people can say whatever they want. They can insert and change the word and skew the game, or skew the words, or whatever that is. And I mean, honestly, I swear this is kind of like what the media is like. So-and-so said this, and it became that. But then when you go back and you look at the actual clip, that's not what they said, Mm-hmm. And that's where we're forming our opinions off our first clip of whatever that is, because they took the really dirty part of that clip and showed it to you, knowing that 90% of you are not going to go look at the full thing because you don't have time. Because, I mean, honestly, TikTok's that way. Like, we're living our life on TikTok, 30 to 10 minutes at a time if you watch the 10-minute one. But I can guarantee you, they said they're pushing, these longer videos and things like that. We get less views on this 30-minute video that I'm going to upload here in about 10 minutes than we get on a 30-second clip. It's pretty simple to see.
It's funny because we even have it. He's talking about the intentional skew. Great point. We have what's called white, gray, and black propaganda. Okay, what does that mean? That means that you have the people that are intentionally trying to mislead you, and you don't know who they are. That's black. Gray, white propaganda is who the person is giving you the information, and they're still trying to mislead you. What is gray? Somewhere in between. Yep. So you have the United States government running white propaganda on a regular basis, depending on what the issue is.
Yep.
Okay. In other words, person is getting on there and just flat telling you an untruth. And they know they are, right? But they're doing it for some kind of agenda based. And obviously, anytime of conflicts comes, you're spinning it in a way that serves your administration. Okay. So you can only imagine when you get to the person who's really trying to mess with you, who won't let you know what it is, right? You don't want to know what their intention is. I mean, we're white property. That when the member of the administration comes out, that they're probably giving you 90% of the truth.
Right.
10%, Why? Because they're doing things that are self-serving. That's the reality of it.
Yeah.
We'd like it to be otherwise, okay? But it's just not.
Yep. And the main point of this whole deal is this whole conversation is it doesn't matter what side you are on. I could care less. Robert could care less. Who are we? We're just two guys talking about the situation that's at hand. Tomorrow is a very big day in this country. It's a very big day every 4 years. That's the way it is. People feel the same way that they do every single day. I feel like the longer that we're around, more information gets out, right or wrong. The fact of the matter is if you see a clip of something that is said and you're kind of on the fence about what you're going to do, I honestly suggest that you go do the research and go look into the full interview or whatever that is. And as Nikki said, we're all Americans. We all have to live with each other. Just because we have a difference of opinion does not mean that we cannot get along and we cannot be a big giant family, because that's what we are, really. We may not be blood related, but we're family.
Right. And one of the things you'll know if you travel this country is 90% of Americans are pretty damn good people.
Yeah.
They really are. Now, granted, the 10%, I'm sorry, there's always a ass in the group.
Yeah.
But the point is that 90% of the people are just good people.
Yep.
And if you just give them a chance and don't get too, don't jump too far ahead, you'll find out they're pretty amazing. That's the one thing you got to love about this country. They really, really we have great people.
Yep. Exactly. So the main focus here to tell you guys today, thank you for hanging out. Thank you for being here with Robert and myself. No matter what, get your ass out there and vote, because there's millions of people who do not vote. And when the majority rules, the majority doesn't rule because you didn't vote, because you think that it's not worth it, because your opinion doesn't matter. Your opinion matters. It matters to everyone in this country. So get your ass out there and vote.
Absolutely. You all have a wonderful day.
Yep. Again, I wanted to, and I haven't done this enough, but I just wanted to thank the Patreon supporters, Anna, Wendell, Nikki. Thank you very much. Hope you guys have a great day. And until next time, I challenge you to find the shape of your success, no matter what that may be. All right. Awesome.